Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. We finished the season and instead today we have National Kit Outrage Day. I always find it quite amusing when the new kits go on sale because there's such diverse opinions, let's put it that way. It's a little bit like after I put out a set of player ratings, literally within the space of 10 seconds can have 5 people hating one kit and another 5 people absolutely adoring it and saying it's the greatest thing ever released. It's a bit, I don't know, personally, it's not really a thing that massively resonates with me. Obviously, we all have certain tastes and things we like or don't like. For instance, last season's third kit was a thing of beauty for me, although on the pitch it was an absolute nightmare. Apart from Newcastle, I think Newcastle was the only game Spurs won in it, so perhaps one to look for if it's reduced this season. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, the strangest thing, other than the kit, you know, everyone can say whether you like or you don't like and all of that, is the motto. I mean, wow, come on, marketing guys, sit down and have a little chat with one another or the club. Raise your dare. I mean, man, you know, did they give up on Watchers Rise? Because they decided that, you know, well, maybe we're not rising so much anymore. Yeah, that was a weird one. I mean, I got to Watchers Rise kind of tied in with the stadium nicely, but you'd like to think it was meant to tie in with the club continuing to rise, which clearly in the last season hasn't happened. But Raise Your Dare, oof, wasn't it? I think they've done To Dare is Tottenham as well. It's like someone sat there and thought, oh, it's almost to do. Yeah, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a weird rant there about mottos and hashtags and slogans, but yeah, stuff like that. You kind of think, especially at a time when, you know, everyone wants Daniel Levy and Spurs to get the checkbook out and actually dare. So to say raise your dare, it's like, oh man, you are absolutely throwing that spotlight on yourself even more. Very strange. But hey, if there's positives come out of it. Harry Kane in the video said N17 is the only place to be. So yeah, we're holding Harry now to that verbal contract, which on top of his own paper contract until 2024, you are now verbally tied to the football club, Harry. So sorry about that, but the moment you did that, you tied yourself in. Yeah, all very strange. But that's the kits. I had someone ask me today, which I found quite amusing as well. It's like, why have they got released? Because there's 4 kits this season. Why have they got released 4 kits? You know, it's just money making. So you don't have to buy all of them. Just, you know, just double checking that people are aware of that. You know, I guess it's just having more options. Yeah, I don't quite get that. You know, unless, hey, there may be people that go out there and buy every kit. And I guess some kids may demand that. I don't know whether parents give in to that or not. But yeah, 2, 3, 4 kits, I guess you don't have to buy them all. You don't even have to buy one. But yeah, anyway, off on a weird tangent to begin with, so I apologise for that. But just as it was kit day, it just made me chuckle some of the stuff. And people get very aggressive about a piece of material, which for me, pretty much they always look better when they're on the players anyway. You know, with someone with the not as perfect physique as football players have, it's never going to look that great. But certainly, you know, it always looks a bit better. Same with the home kit. I think the home kit, I saw early images of it and I thought, oh, the grey, it doesn't look great. But actually on the players, meh, it's all right. But now I'm kind of going into the whole justifying area. Let's move on with other stuff. I want to go into, kind of start with a couple of topical things. So Troy Parrott next. Troy Parrott, as you've seen, is closing in on, unless someone comes in at the last minute, looks to be heading to Millwall in the Championship, and I think that's a really good deal. You know, I had someone today say to me, oh, you know, Wayne Rooney was used. Why can't Spurs just give him a chance? I think, first off, let me say, Troy Parrott is a terrific talent, and he's going to be a top player. But for me, Wayne Rooney was a bit of a generational, 1 in a million talent. That kid at 16 was built like an adult and almost swore there. And, you know, it was a case of them actually having to hold him back before that match against Arsenal. He was ready at 16. You know, not every player is like that. Troy had a couple of, you know, he was terrific in pre-season and he had a couple of chances last season, albeit very small ones. And you know, you could see there's a fantastic player there. He just needs time and his own space to develop. And I think Millwall is perfect for him. Spurs are going to buy a striker this summer. They are. You know, if they don't, it'll be an absolute disaster. But all signs are pointing towards the fact that they are. Which means Troy was only going to get even less playing time anyway. So this is perfect for all parties. Millwall they finished 8th in the Championship this season. That's a terrific deal, I think. Really hungry club, one that will want to challenge for the playoffs and promotion next season. And from what I've heard from people that kind of know about Millwall, he'll bring something a little bit different to what their other strikers do, which means he'll have more chance. I mean, Spurs are never going to send him anywhere though he doesn't have a chance. But ultimately, I think that's key as well, is the player has to earn it. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Jack Clarke and not getting the minutes at Leeds or QPR this season, but ultimately, it's down to the player to earn those minutes. No club guarantees anyone game time, because that's a disastrous policy to take. Essentially, you've got to go in there and prove, because if you can't win a place at a team like that, then how are you going to do that when you come back to Tottenham? And, you know, obviously, there's the lovely symmetry with Millwall, and Harry Kane's obviously one of his early loans was there as well. We know, although it wasn't a loan, Teddy Sheringham was obviously a big player in the early days for Millwall. It's perfect on so many levels. It's just one slight step down, but it's into a league that is so physical and demanding, and it will. I think I tweeted it out last night. It's the toughest, but also most perfect classroom that Troy can have. You know, it's perfect for him. And keeping him in London means the club can keep a close eye on how he's getting on and everything that's going on. It means he can come back to Spurs training ground all the time. That's often what they do with young players, that they'll spend maybe 1-2 days a week back at the Hotspur Way as well, just still doing some training there and things like that. It's a great experience for him, and it's one that he, I think hopefully will grab with both hands. And then it puts him in the scenario where next season, if he does really well and Millwall go up, then Spurs might look at it and say, well, do we bring him back now, or do we let him have that Premier League season of experience with Millwall, and then we absolutely reap the benefits? Hand him a new contract before he goes, and then you've got a Premier League experienced guy who at that age will still be 20. He's 18. I think we forget how young this guy is, and I think it's great. I think it's a really exciting thing, and to be honest, we cover Millwall are one of our clubs that we cover, so on football.london, so I'd be hoping that I could get down there occasionally and just kind of keep an eye on how he's doing, because I think that could really be the making of him. Terrific loan move, and apparently they've shown a lot of interest in him. There are a lot of Championship clubs looking at him, but for Millwall, one ticks a lot of boxes. I want to go into strikers, because I mentioned there that Spurs then are looking to sign a striker. Of course they are, and there's a few options out there. I mean, for me, Spurs have got this thing currently, which a lot of people I think forget, is that they still have this homegrown issue. And if they let Kyle Walker-Peters go, it's only going to get worse, and Danny Rose might go. So Spurs really need to boost those numbers. So I do think the Callum Wilson links make a lot of sense, especially if he's 10 million. That's an incredible bargain for me, for a player who's an England international, scores goals in the Premier League. And I think the challenge you're probably going to have is other clubs maybe being able to offer him more minutes, but bearing in mind he's quite versatile, he can play out wide as well. I think it'd be a great step for him to come to Spurs as well. We've seen that. Harry Kane, yes, he will start most games when he's fit. However, if he can play alongside him, form a partnership, he's played in the England squad with him, or at least been with him there, I think that would be a great move. It's certainly a player Spurs are looking at. Like I say, I think the only issue is if someone comes in and says, look, we can offer you playing week in, week out at a higher level than Bournemouth. But yeah, Spurs certainly having a look at that. If it's 10 million, honestly, just go for it. And then you've got slightly left field one, but you've got someone, if you're just going to go for experience, like a Fernando Llorente, although Llorente probably is going to be available by the sounds of it. You've got someone like Troy Deeney. I think the one issue with him is he's got a knee injury, but we know what an outspoken, ambitious guy he is. And if he were to come to a club knowing that he's going to be a little bit of that battering ram striker that maybe is there to back up Harry Kane and give him a bit of a foil, someone to work off of, you'd think he probably would as well. One last big move, unless he feels that he's a Watford man I'm sure there's some people probably cringing and thinking, oh, we could get so much better than that, but we're just going to keep coming back to this striker issue at Tottenham. There's no, surprise at why Spurs haven't signed a striker. They haven't got the funds to splash on a massive name who will be guaranteed to start alongside Kane. They've always had to go for either the older or the younger, inexperienced striker. People that know that their game time is going to be slightly reduced. So, I've seen, is it I can never pronounce his name, Osimhen's agent, Milik's agent. They've all said the same thing. We'll come to Tottenham if Harry Kane's not there. And that's the kind of way they approach it. There's so many players just know. Although, interestingly, Milik now seems to be hovering around a Juventus move. I'm not sure with Dybala and Ronaldo you're going to be playing there much, mate. But, so I find that interesting. And Joshua King, although technically he's Norwegian, obviously, another player that Spurs have looked at in the past and could potentially be a versatile striker. I think that's the key. It's getting someone who is naturally a striker but can play also out wide if you need him to. Unlike, say, Son and Lucas, who are naturally wide men who can play as a striker. It's like the other way around. I think there's a few options out there looking at, but Wilson, I really hope they pursue that because I think that's a terrific deal. And it just, again, like I was saying with Parrott, ticks a lot of boxes. I think he'd do really well at Spurs as well. Before we move on, I think we must very briefly talk about the Crystal Palace game. I don't want to spend too much time on it because, quite frankly, it was a load of garbage. Went down there obviously to Selhurst Park, and we kind of all got very excited because we had that lovely early goal. Lo Celso working hard, picking out Harry Kane with a lovely little ball, and Kane clinical bang straight in that bottom corner. It looked like it was opening the floodgates to what could be against a team that had lost 7 in a row. And it just went completely the other way. It was so like the Bournemouth match. And it was so disappointing. When you've had a game like the game against Leicester, where they've absolutely been brutally tearing a team apart, you can't then kind of go and do the same tactics at Palace. It was naff. And, was it 2 shots on target, I think, against a team that's lost 7 in a row, 2 corners. It was so rubbish. But ultimately, job done. Spurs got 6th, get the Europa. We'll see this Saturday in the FA Cup final whether Spurs start in the second qualifying round. If Arsenal win, and if Chelsea win, then Spurs go straight into the group stages. There's been some kind of back and forth over whether if Wolves then were to win the Europa League as well as Arsenal, Spurs could still find themselves out. From everything I've been told, that's not the case. I know people are saying you can have a maximum of 8 teams. It's on the Premier League website. But from everything I've been told, UEFA consider their European title holders to be separate. So that wouldn't influence that. We'll see if that's definitely the case. But that certainly is the noises that's coming out with regards to that. But yeah, let's see what happens Saturday anyway. It could all be a moot point. Because, I think Spurs would obviously much rather get into the group stages than have 3 more matches before they even get there, which is just, it's not great at the start of a season either. I think they all have to happen in the first, 2nd, 3rd and 4th week, I think, of the season. It's just madness. It was a bit weird in the press conference afterwards because myself and Jonathan Veal, who you might know, very nice chap from the Press Association, we kind of just got to hold the press conference with Mourinho because either some journalists didn't want to ask questions and some couldn't find, or one, certainly I know, couldn't find the raise hand button on the Zoom press conference call. So Jonathan and I were just sitting in the stands and just kind of essentially got to run riot and ask him all of our questions we wanted to get out before the end of the season. So, I asked him obviously about transfer stuff, and he was talking about how he'd was really enjoying working with Steve Hitchens, Spurs chief scout, looking into all the possibilities, and that everything they're looking at, he says, are realistic for the club. No transfers they're going to look at are going to break the bank or make things difficult for Tottenham. Essentially, reading between the lines, no excuses. He said he's got his targets that he knows will do the job for Tottenham Hotspur next season, and they can be real challengers, and they're all achievable. So I'd be really interested to see now how quickly they work, because the other aspect to this is it's a 10-week transfer window. It's a long one. and it goes way into the next season, like almost, was it 3 or 4 weeks into next season? So at a time when Spurs, are making big deals about this £200 million revenue loss that they're going to face this next financial year, they're going to be looking for bargains even more than ever. And we know how frustrating it is waiting late into the window. But I do wonder, if they have these targets set, is this the one year they just have to go out and get them and stop any problems? Because I was talking to Mourinho about this as well, and he was kind of saying, I don't know whether I'll have them for pre-season or not. He said it's such a long and complicated, strange window, this one. So obviously we know Tottenham, we know last-minute deals, we'll know there'll be a few. But the more players Mourinho obviously gets to work with in training pre-season, when they come back in, what is it? It's only just under 3 weeks now. The better for him to kind of stamp his authority on this new look Tottenham Hotspur. That was one of the things I asked him. I said, how different is your starting 11 for this first day of next season going to look to this one that started against Crystal Palace? And he was like, do you know what? I just don't know. He said, I just don't know how this market's going to work and how exactly whether we'll be able to get these players we want and stuff. And that's quite interesting, because obviously in his previous clubs, he'll have been confident. I think he once told us, he went to Abramovich and said, I want that right back, and Abramovich went out and got him. It's not like that at Tottenham, much to our frustration. We know that. So it'd be really interesting to see the way this works. But yeah, do you know what? I've said this before, and people kind of slightly mocked me after the Palace game, but I am quietly confident, maybe even not quietly, I'm quite confident about next season under Mourinho. The football has been pants. There's no getting around that. But I do feel that's part of the foundation building and the tightening up of Tottenham. And, you can look at Mourinho sides in the past, and they all have this solid base, but they do score goals. This kind of belief that Mourinho teams don't. Just look at some of them. They absolutely smashed the goals in. They were just mean as hell at the back as well. And I had a good discussion the other day with Darren Lewis, another journalist, a Mirror journalist. We were on a podcast, and he was saying about, but look at Man U and look at the attacking options they have and the amount of goals they've scored in the Premier League. And I kind of, at the time, hadn't thought about it too much, but I looked at the Premier League table afterwards. Man United scored 5 more goals than Tottenham this season. It's not, I think there's this perception, because of after the restart, the amount or lack of chances created, it won't stay like that. Mourinho teams aren't like that. They're tight, but they're not, they don't just shut up shop and do nothing. And he admitted the other day, he said to me was it me or it was Jonathan, one of the two of us, that essentially I heard the result, or I heard the scoreline from the Chelsea match against Wolves, and I kind of got a bit more pragmatic and told us to sit back and protect the lead. So kind of you see why that went a bit naff in that game, but ultimately, yeah, it did do the job. Slightly awkward, the celebrations afterwards. I was there. I wasn't too far from the subs bench, the extended subs bench. There was a massive roar before they did that big huddle. For us, as journalists and for the fans, having been in a Champions League final just over a year ago, it's a bit like, really? You're celebrating a Europa League qualification? But I think for him and his staff, it was a big moment in terms of, we came here, they were 14th, and we've got them into European competition. And for Mourinho, maintains a record, I believe, where every single season at every club he's managed, he's got them into European competition for the next season, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool stat. But yeah, so I am quite quietly confident about next season. So much so that we booked a holiday, actually, a family holiday for the week, which I only learnt after it was booked, that was going to be the week that had the final game of the season, the Europa League final, and I think the FA Cup final as well. So my wife has very kindly agreed. We've pushed off the holiday a little bit into the summer, just because I just wouldn't want to be that guy who is the back of my mind thinking, oh my God, I hope something special doesn't happen this season for Spurs because I'm not going to be there to report on it. Yeah, a little bit selfish, but Spurs have won 1 trophy in 20 years. If there's a chance of being there and reporting on that moment happening, I really want to make that happen. So thank you very much to my wife, who was very understanding. In other kind of news around the club, you might have seen that Mourinho kind of hinted heavily to me the other day that with Ricardo Formosino going, the tactical analyst, one of his staff, he was going to replace him with someone very well connected with Tottenham Hotspur. I found out soon afterwards, and it was confirmed anyway the next day, I think it was, or the day after, that it will be Ledley King, which is brilliant. It's such a great move on so many levels. Obviously, Tottenham legend, he really is, Ledley. He's one of the, if not maybe the best defender that Spurs have ever had. Just imagine him with two knees instead of one. And he'd already been working under Mourinho, doing a little bit of defensive work before lockdown. And, you know, if we're going to take a little bit of a leap, maybe, the defence has been pretty good. Sheffield United aside, and that goal against Palace after the restart. Did Ledley have something to do with that? Who knows? Who knows? We know Mourinho's a bit of a defensive coach anyway himself in terms of getting the best out of defence. So for me, you know, we saw Japhet Tanganga signing a new deal as well this week, a new 5-year deal. Japhet Tanganga being able to learn next season from Ledley King and Jose Mourinho. Is there anything more perfect than that? That is just, you know, I think that's a great one. I spoke to Ledley ages ago I was outside doing some kind of a stadium event, and he'd said, I'm not going to go back to coaching. And then I had another word with him in Shanghai, last summer, and everything had changed. He was like, no, you know what, that's something I really want to get back into. I feel I've got the hunger back, and I'm going to get my coaching badges and everything. And here we are. It's going to be one of Jose Mourinho's coaches, which is fantastic. He won't obviously do the same job Formosino did, who was tactical analyst. You know, João Sacramento, that's his expertise, so he can kind of swallow up absorb a lot of that, and that leaves Ledley, hopefully, to do defensive work, which I just think is brilliant. I think it's great for Ledley. For me, he's always been one of these what-if guys. Despite how brilliant we know he is, and people like Thierry Henry say he's the best defender he's ever played against, we know for him it's always got to be what if. You know, what if he had two perfect knees? He would have been one of the best defenders in the world, and maybe would have taken Spurs to bigger things, you know, or even, loath to say it, but maybe moved on and won trophies galore and been considered better than someone like Rio Ferdinand, something like that. So this gives him a chance to get rid of the what-ifs in a coaching and potentially management career as well. And I love it. I love the fact that he's kind of got this second career now. And he's such a lovely guy. He really is. In other news this week, Alfie Devine has signed up. Hopefully divine inspiration from Tottenham there. Young player. He's only 15 right now. He turns 16, I think it's this weekend. Very highly rated. Wigan Athletic young midfielder. Spurs have, you could say, slightly took advantage of the issues at Wigan with them going into administration, but then on the other hand, it's going to be, there's reportedly £300,000 for this young player, which obviously is going to help Wigan out. So it kind of works both ways. He'd only just signed a new long-term deal at Wigan, and he'd been training with the first team, despite the fact he was just 15. That's how highly they rate him. Released from Liverpool when he was 11, but swiftly kind of got over that, and he was at some England under-16. He played for England under-16s at an international event, tournament. I can't remember what it was, and he was named player of the tournament. And apparently, from that moment on, I think it was even last December. I don't think it was that long ago. Everyone suddenly was like, "Wow!" And Spurs have kind of won the race to get him. So, one to watch out for. I wrote a little piece yesterday because obviously with finances and stuff, I think Spurs are still going to do transfers. You know, I think people got a little bit overexcited about this yesterday. All I said was that Spurs are going to have to look to their academy, as they should every season. I think sometimes people forget how cool it is to be able to bring through players from your academy, and it's like transfers are better. They're not always better. You know, if Spurs had never looked at Harry Kane instead of kept on going with Soldado and Adebayor and players like that, we never would have had the machine that is Harry Kane. So, you know, I did a little piece and I just said the players I think I'm going to look out for, maybe for the next 12 months, 18 months. There's a hell of a lot of other ones that are coming through. But for me, there's Dennis Serkin, who'll be training with the first team next season at left back. Harvey White in the midfield, who's also going to be training with the first team, as is Malachi Fagan-Walcott, the centre-back, who's had a knee operation, but he'll be recovering from that right now and doing his rehab. And also slightly, who aren't in the first team yet, who I think are probably for me the next couple, Janelle Bennett, who I think is a terrific young winger, plays on the left but can also play up front or on the right. Really high hopes they got for him. I think he's 18 now. And Kian Etete up front. You know, we talk about Alfie Devine and the money spent for him. Etete was signed last summer for $200,000 from Notts County. Had injuries after he joined Spurs, which didn't help. But for the under-18s, I think he scored something like, I think he got into double figures in not many more games or something like that. He had a good season, you know, and I think he's something that Spurs don't have. He's like a big 6'4" kind of, almost like a bit like Llorente kind of figure, but has a really decent technique as well, and a little bit of a speed. He's not an absolute lump up there. You know, he's got a little bit of a turn of that initial pace about him. Maybe not over a longer distance, but actually that initial surge, and one to watch out for as well. There's loads of others. You know, Lasala's a young kid. There's one to watch out for at right back. Various other players that I could name, but this was mainly about the next 12 to 18 months, and people don't like it. It's strange, isn't it? Maybe it's a FIFA thing, I don't know, and that includes me. Maybe there's such an excitement at transfers. Sometimes you forget how cool it is to see one of your own come through. And you know, same with Parrott and Winks initially. I know people are now split of opinion, but at the start, it's so great. And Skip, you know, Skippy's going to go off on his loan. It looks like certainly Fulham are very interested. Depends obviously what happens to them. They've got their second leg of their playoff, and if you didn't see it, Josh Onama's goal in the first leg, wow, what a cracker. But yeah, if Skippy goes somewhere like that, gets a season, you know, potentially in the Premier League, I think he'll come back. And as Mourinho told me the other day, was it a week ago or so, future Tottenham captain. Honestly, Skippy's got a great kind of career ahead of him. And I think the other thing with Skippy is that, you know, Spurs are looking for a midfielder. There's no hiding from that. You know, Hojbjerg clearly is the one they want. He wants to come to Tottenham. It's about just getting that price right with Southampton. I think Southampton are probably realising they're in a scenario where the player only really wants to go to Spurs. And I just hope Spurs don't drag it out and it gets done quickly. Because again, for me, that's quite a crucial role in the team of the guy who's going to play. He's kind of somewhere in the middle of a defensive midfielder and a box-to-box player. And if they can get that done, to have him in for Mourinho's pre-season will be so important. But obviously, yeah, him coming in will mean Skip will then have to, will definitely need that loan. And I think it will be great for him. A bit like Parrott, I think it's all about the development and how you come back to a club. You know, we forget Harry Kane, probably Spurs' most successful academy product. A lot of his development was done on those, I think he had 5 loan moves or 6? And that's what made the Kane that came back to Tottenham. And I think, you know, we kind of got away from that under Pochettino. Didn't like to loan out players that had a future under him. And I think Mourinho just says, no, they're not going to play for now. Let's get them out, get them ready, and then they'll be ready to come in, and they will save us money in future transfer windows. So yeah, so Hojbjerg, obviously, I've had a lot of people asking kind of, what do I feel are going to be the positions Spurs need new players in? Well, for me, I think you're looking at right back, defensive midfielder, attacking midfielder. I think they need another advanced playmaker. I think that was massively shown up at Palace, how Lo Celso, when he kind of went quiet in the game, there was no one else doing that role. And you just can't rely on one player. I'm not going to go into that in detail because I moaned about it before. And I think if Juan Foyth does go off, he actually said this week that he's really enjoying working with Mourinho. And, you know, it's up to him whether... It's up to kind of almost Mourinho and the club. If he's going to get minutes, then he's very happy to stay. And if he's not, then obviously they'll look to move him on in Europe permanently or not. A lot of Leeds talk, as there always has been. You know, Bielsa and the Argentinian connection. And obviously with Spurs, with the centre-back thing, if Foyth were to go, then clearly they're looking at Kim Min-jae, South Korean young player, 23-year-old who plays in Beijing. Beijing want a little bit more money and they don't want to lose him. Spurs, obviously, that might be another one. They sit out and see what happens with Foyth. But yeah, for me, they're the 5 position. I do think they'll get about 5 players in, 4 or 5. You know, he said to me the other day, he said, am I going to sign, Mourinho, he said, are we going to sign 10 players? No. Are we going to sign a £100 million player? No. But we will make improvements to this team. And I think that's about right. 4 or 5 and potentially see some outgoings, you know, the likes of Rose, Walker-Peters, probably Cameron Carter-Vickers had a brilliant season, second half of the season at Luton, helping keep them up. Luton fans adore him. If Luton can afford him, I think he'd probably love it and Spurs would get some good money. I've had a fair few people asking about Philippe Coutinho as well as that advanced playmaker. Personally, I think he would be amazing. My issue with it is the figures being spoken about for a 28-year-old. It's so un-Spurs-like. I think you're looking at somewhere between 25 and 30 million for a season loan, which is incredible. You know, I think it was someone said it's like 20 million euros for the loan. I think it was Kia Gorbachev, his agent actually said it. It's 20 million euros for the loan and then another 10 million for his wages on top. That's just not the way Spurs operate. You know, I'd be very surprised. I've seen talk of an Dembele swap deal with Barcelona and stuff like that as well. As I've said, everything right now points towards Spurs wanting to keep and develop Tonga Dembele and feeling just like Son in his first year, it was just a tough first season and it's all about adapting in the second season. You know, even Sissoko, who'd been in the Premier League, struggled in his first probably 18 months at Spurs. So, yeah, I'd say I'd love it, but I just can't see it being a doable financial deal for Spurs unless something amazing happens with the price. The other one I keep getting asking about is Izzy. I will pronounce it right one week, at QPR. He's one that Spurs have certainly looked at a lot. I do fear that they've maybe waited a bit too long in that, in terms of there's a lot of talk that Palace are really getting close to a deal with him and West Ham are kind of sniffing around too. I do wonder whether he's quite the player that Spurs need right now, in terms of he's a dangerous player. I'm not entirely sure he's a playmaker. I think they've got a lot of the kind of wingers and pacey dribblers kind of thing, but I don't know whether they have that other advanced playmaker. I'm not quite sure he fits that bill, and they may decide to prioritise elsewhere. Again, I'd love to see him at Spurs because he's an incredibly talented young player, but if he does or not, I don't know. And then you're looking at relegated teams, obviously, as well. I know people hate that. They call it bargain basement shopping kind of thing, but there's a lot of bargains to be had there, you know, or could be. I mean, at Norwich, let's go for it. You've got Aarons, Cantwell, Godfrey, Buendia, who I'm really coming around to the idea of. I think if Spurs want to have another advanced playmaker, this guy created, I think, something like, was he third or fourth in terms of chances created, and he was playing at a relegated team. I think he'd be a great shout. And Spurs look very closely at Norwich. They've had scouts there this season. I'd be stunned if he's not on a list somewhere for Tottenham. And then you've got Bournemouth. Obviously, you would have had maybe Ake, but I think he was always going to be out of Spurs' price range. And City now look like they've done or going to do a deal for him. They also have homegrown kind of numbers they want to increase. And then you've got Brooks, Wilson, and King, as we spoke about earlier. And then at Watford, you know, you've got Deeney, Sarr. Sarr's a talented young fast player, but maybe Spurs have got enough wingers. And then you've got Doucouré as well, as a player they've looked at a lot in the past as well. Yeah, I think that's probably the main one. Pookie, some people have said at Norwich as well. Maybe. It would so much depend on the price. You'd have to go for him as a bit of a bargain deal, I think. I'd say maybe some people have asked about the left back. Is that, you know, do you need another left back? I'd say they look quite content at the moment with Davies, Sessegnon and Sirkin. You know, I think there's probably enough now and potential there to work with. Is it a massive priority? I'd probably say no. They'll probably now go out and sign a left back. But for me, I kind of think right back's more the pressing concern, with Walker Peters likely to go on, and Aurier potentially, you know, he asked to move last summer. I wouldn't be stunned if he asked the same again. You know, it was kind of for family reasons last time, and obviously family stuff really has been pretty awful for him at the moment. So maybe one to keep an eye on. I think with Sessegnon, they really need to decide on where he's going to play, and whether he's going to play any left wing minutes first, to prepare him for that left back role, or as a wing back. You know, there's been talk about being loaned out. I'd be surprised at that. I'd be surprised that you'd buy a player for 30 million with Onana included as well, and then loan him out 12 months later. He's a very young guy. He only turned 20 recently. He needs time. And Mourinho told me a couple of weeks back that he and his coaches are really working with him. Actually, sorry, it wasn't me. He told someone else that that's something they're working with him on. So hopefully that's with a view to progressing him next season. And there's other young players. Jedson, you know, he's on a loan deal for 18 months. I think they need to figure out what his best role is as well. You know, obviously the loan gave them a chance to properly have a look at him, and we'll see what happens with him now. But is he a defensive midfielder? Is he a box-to-box player? Is he a right midfielder? You know, we forget that even with Sissoko, when Mourinho first came in, he was asked, where's Moussa Sissoko's best role? And he said on the right wing. So clearly, Sissoko is not his long-term plan for playing in the centre of the midfield. So yeah, I think they need to properly work out, and I'm sure he will. Mourinho absolutely analyses everything to death. So he will look at Jedson, and he will look at Hojbjerg, potentially looking maybe like he's coming in. Winks, exactly what Winks is. He a defensive midfielder? Is he a box-to-box player? I don't think he really has worked that out. Mourinho's doing a lot of defensive work with him, but I think there's still that to be done as well. I think the key thing he told me, Mourinho, the other day, I keep saying he told me, but we just seem to have had a couple of press conferences where I'm being able to get some quite, I don't want to say good questions in because that's kind of bigging myself up, but questions where he's given me really good answers is probably the best way to put it. And he's been quite fascinating. And he made a real point of saying the key thing is no key players are being sold this summer. No one is going that I don't want to go. And I think that's massive because we always have these question marks over Spurs players every single summer. But he's very clearly come out and said that. So that gives you that base to work with, and then it's about filling in around it. I just want to say, before we go, I know I've been waffling away quite a lot here, but Jan Vertonghen and Michel Vorm, obviously, their last, that's it, not even last anything, they've gone. Michel Vorm, yeah, of course, he came in against Norwich, didn't do particularly well, had a bit of a gaffe, but I think people have been a bit harsh on Vorm. He's one of these ultimate professional guys. I think you don't know what he does behind the scenes. He's an experienced voice, and Lloris has said it as well. He's been so brilliant in terms of helping him prepare for stuff. Older guy, just kind of gave everything he could for the team. And, even coming back to help while Lloris was out, I think he's served his time with Tottenham. I don't think he deserves the criticism he gets. I think he's been a real important squad member for the team. And obviously we wish him well on whatever he does next. It may be retirement, who knows? It may be going back to play at a lower level, perhaps. We don't know. And Jan Vertonghen. What else can we say about Jan Vertonghen? Honestly, for me, probably the best Spurs defender I've seen over a consistent amount of time, other than Ledley King. Toby Alderweireld was brilliant, but for me, over a longer period of time and his versatility, I thought Vertonghen was just magnificent. As a left-back as well, I think he's probably the best left-back Spurs have had in a long, long time as well. He was phenomenal in that role. There's a part of me that always wonders what would have happened had he played there and you had another centre-back in there. But his partnership with Alderweireld was brilliant, and from everything I kind of understood about it, he didn't actually want to leave Tottenham. But he just couldn't agree a deal while he was still at the top of his form. And then obviously we know he had a serious hamstring injury last year, and there seemed to be some doubts about kind of where he was at level-wise coming into this season, and it just never really worked for him. Pochettino and Mourinho both really didn't fancy him as a regular first-team player again, which is a massive shame. And then obviously from that point on, he was never really going to get the contract he wanted. But magnificent player for Tottenham. And I do hope, and Mourinho kind of hinted at it, that one day he comes back a bit like Ledley King as a coach and maybe a manager. I think he's got it in him. He's a big voice in the changing room, very popular, very keen mind. Whenever I've interviewed him, he's always had a really insightful stuff to say. So I really hope that that's what we see with Vertonghen, because he was a brilliant boy. 8 years at Tottenham and he gave everything. And yeah, my mind flashes back to the goal against Swansea, the link up with Bale, the Dortmund goal and assist. Just phenomenal player. So yeah, best wishes to him and whatever he does next as well. There's some talk about whether it's going to be Italy. It's either Atletico Madrid, I think. There's an English club linked with him who's completely gone out of my mind as well. But wherever he goes, I'm sure he'll be wished well by Spurs fans, as long as it's not Arsenal, of course. But yeah, so yeah, two players obviously moving on, and various youth players have gone on as well. Who've left. Much of them we've spoken about before, and we knew they were going. But yes, now we begin this 10-week silly season, the transfer window, and what will come and the season to come. But like I say, I'm probably, people will say misguidedly, but I'm quite confident about what Tottenham are going to do in the transfer window and also next season. I think Mourinho has been so clear. He presents these reports to Daniel Levy and talks to Steve Hitchen now. It's interesting, the dynamic with Steve Hitchen. In the early days, way back, Pochettino used to speak to Hitchen every day. They talk for hours and stuff. When Mourinho first came in, he and Hitchen, it was a little bit of a 10-minute, 15-minute here and there a day kind of chat. And from everything I'm hearing now is they really do have a really good relationship and they're really looking at stuff. And obviously with the absence of director of football, which you'd hope Tottenham will remedy at some point. Hitchens having to do quite a all over the place role. He's a chief scout, but obviously he's kind of having to take on functions that maybe are also a director of football would take, and some of those also been done by Levy and the transfer committee they have as well. And I just think it's really interesting that dynamic working is so important. And Mourinho, you know, if he gets what he wants this summer, he clearly is, as he said, you know, it's the right level for the club and they're the right level for me. No excuses, Daniel Levy. Get it done. Don't let it drag out too long, although we know that'll be an aspect. But I just kind of, yeah, I feel that there's this, you have to back Mourinho. If you don't back Mourinho and he doesn't do what he does at every other club, we know why it didn't happen. And it's unlikely to be Mourinho's fault. And the way he is, he will let us know why it's not his fault. So I think there's that little eye and a little extra scrutiny and focus on Tottenham. And I think that will work in Mourinho's favour this summer. So there you go. Sorry, I've been waffling on for a while. I will head off now. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and we shall talk again next week. I might do a Q&A in the weeks ahead as well. So get your questions in below as well. And yeah, we'll have a good old chat. So talk to you later. Bye.